Hello, Global 9 Honors students, and welcome to week 34 for our screencast of May 10th through the 14th. Well, we have finally made it to the dark ages of Europe, the Middle Ages, as it were, maybe more properly called or named. But we are still in the post classical era. We're going clockwise right around the Mediterranean Sea from the Byzantine Empire in the east down to the Islamic Empire in the southeast, across Africa with the kingdoms of Africa, and now we're making our way up to Europe, where we will be talking about a decentralized feudal society. Here's how we got there. Let's take a quick glance at this period of time. So you'll see in my notability notes, and we'll be taking a look at this throughout the week as we study. But we have a timeline that identifies, actually 2,500 years of history. So even though we're talking about current times here, we go back to 509 BCE. The Republic of Rome gets started, and that, of course, is a 1,000-year period of time where we will note that this is an absolute, strong central government. And that basically means that Rome or Constantinople is the central house of government where a person, dictator, emperor, president, whatever the case is, along with a bureaucratic government, is going to be in charge in making decisions. We've got this time after the fall of Rome. So the first activity that we're going to do this week with self-paced work is going to be about the circumstances of the fall of Rome. So here is about 1,000 years of the effect of not having Rome in Europe. Later, we'll have around the 1500s the Renaissance. So the other R unit, okay, we've got Rome and the Renaissance. And what's in between that? Well, the Middle Ages, a lot of times called the Dark Ages because there was a discussion around little advancement, certainly the lack of trade and cultural diffusion that we'll talk about here in the upcoming moments of this introduction here is basically what's going to go on. So the Middle Ages is the proper term. You can see it's about 1,000 years as well in Rome. So let's get to it. We'll hop over here to Schoology, where I have the first activity. Here is an illustration of the medieval manor. One of the things we'll be talking about, a self-sufficient enterprise, okay? Economically, this will be its own little system that will be just one of thousands and thousands of different little territories. I don't want to call them kingdoms just yet, but territories that will be, it'll have everything it needs. It'll have everything from a church to a mill, to a water supply, to farm fields, and houses for the people who live there, and so forth. This introduction here is really good, and I hope that you go over and read through these things because it really sets up how this time period is going to be set out. Even though this backward society is going to take place for a long time, Europe eventually will emerge out of this a very strong entity in the world. And it's going to come by a couple of things that will take place over a long period of time also. They will look at the political order that will take place. It starts off as very decentralized. In other words, no one's really in charge except for local and regional rulers. But from that comes, different kinds of power. It really puts the thumbprint down on a particular group of people who's not in charge, and that's going to have an effect. There will be a slow process for economic recovery. A lot of the trade will pretty much be zeroed out. Again, the medieval manor, or the manorial system as it's called, will increase. They will become self-sufficient. They really won't need to go anywhere for anything, as they will produce everything by themselves. Now, we do not do this in our standard of living today. We go to Wegmans and Tops and different places for our food, and it's delivered, from farm fields all over our country and world. But we rely on that, right? So we are not self-sufficient. We are not completely independent. We rely on water source being brought to our homes, heating sources being brought to our homes, internet being brought to our homes, and then we go out and do basically just one job. We don't do all the jobs necessary for survival. We'll see, lastly, another big topic is going to be the unity of the Christian church. Because there is no strong central figure in terms of the political world, we're going to see that the spiritual world is going to have a massive impact on the people of Europe. And thus, they will put their loyalty to their faith will become the big focus point. So let's take a look at the activity that comes here, the impact from the fall of Rome. I'm going to hop back over to my iPad and Schoology notes so we could take a look at this. I'll go back to the beginning here. So your job is to go through and try to just review back, right? We're cycling and spiraling back to the fall of Rome. So what are some causes for the fall of Rome? And then what was that impact? What was that effect? So if you're going to say something like, the rise of Christianity, good answer. We're going to see that the loyalty is going to shift away from the nation or the state or the ruler. It will be now towards that God or spiritual figure. And you can see there's a few other responses there. This piece here is going to just describe, again, that middle period in between the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. Here, this is where you're going to have a little work. Take each of these different items and generally, 1 to 2 bullets, and then respond to it. So the first one is an example. There were several reasons for the decline, including invasions and increased taxes, political instability. So I wrote, and I highlighted it in green, Rome's empire was too big to properly secure the vast empire, and they were under constant threat from outsiders. So those are 2 reasons. And the greed and power caused internal struggles for political power. So these are some things that we're looking at as, if here's the reason why, here's the effect, and here's the cause, or effect rather, with how it actually shuffled out. So go ahead and work your way through these points and directly answer it side by side. Here we'll see a map of Western and Eastern Europe, where the old Roman Empire, right? So we've got the West and the East, and we've been doing this all along with effect to the Roman Empire, as we've been talking about. Whoops, let me just get a thicker pen to see it better. Talking about the Roman Empire and this division between East and West, and of course the prosperity here from the trade routes and the unhappiness of a decentralized government that's been left behind. And it's going to be really difficult for movement to go past and to the western side because they're just not near those trade routes, and we'll continue to see how that's going to shape out. I do point out that the modern period is referring to the Renaissance that we've talked about before, Rome and the Renaissance, so the middle period. So here we've got another activity, and I've answered the first questions. This map is a little bit different. Generally, we've been drawing it this way, but you could still see in this particular map, because the Islamic Empire is kind of going on here. But as we look at this, these are different kingdoms, and you can see the shading of that versus this is an empire, right? So decentralized is a key word that we'll be using versus centralized. Decentralized, feudal period, lots of little small minor kingdoms, centralized being more of a dynasty or an empire. So in here you'll see a couple of bulleted items about Western Europe and then Eastern Europe. And we see again, just being controlled with different groups of people and the cultures. Kingdoms is obviously one of the key parts. Another example around religion, double T chart for us to take a look at, answer the couple of questions. Here we'll talk a little bit more specifically, another drawing about the feudal medieval manor. And we see all these different components of places, here on the manor, the different fields, the different pastures, okay? There's all the different houses that I keep clicking on here. There's going to be a water supply. There is a church. So there's all these things that's going to make people self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is going to be a key word that you'll want to use when talking about this. And because they were self-sufficient, trade is going to decrease. Or maybe because trade decreased, it was unsafe for merchants to travel throughout Europe. And that's what made the Trans-Saharan network so good, is that safety was key. Mansa Musa, the kingdom of Mali, made sure that trade was safe. So people were able to trade products, so things continued. But in Europe, it wasn't. There was no strong central government. So trade decreases. It results in a self-sufficient society called the medieval manor. The opposite side of the kingdom, or of Europe rather, is we have this crossroad. So here's Constantinople. This is the Bosporus Strait, and we're going to see all kinds of trade and travel coming in from the Silk Roads that we've been talking about in class. And of course, it's going to make the Byzantine very wealthy. So knowing that, hopefully you could answer the last question here is looking at, the conjunction, using the conjunctions but, because, or so. So try to use those words in your question. Using evidence from the documents above, respond to the task. So the documents were about trade, lack of trade, the two different kinds of faith, and then lastly, just the way governments were set up, decentralized or centralized. Okay, next activity is going to be the feudalism and the manor. And as I started to talk a little bit about this, we're going to specifically get into, what was the feudal manor and why did it develop, and then how is it going to impact people. So as we look at this, we're going to see a little diagram about social hierarchy, and we could see in this picture, your job is to notice, think, wonder. So what do you see? What do you think? And then what questions do you have? We obviously see this person in a full suit with a saw, chopping down the rings of the ladder, not allowing people wearing common clothes an opportunity to move up. So certainly this is about rigid social structures, but explain how. So that's your first part to introduce us to this. You can see I've highlighted a few things as we begin to look at feudalism and decentralized government, the social structures that will be in place, because now we have different groups of people, right? Social structures, theme number 5, and how people are going to be set into society. The manner, self-sufficient, again, comes to mind. We've already looked at this diagram. So this is just an introduction to how this is going to set up, like what effect is this going to have on people. So as we use the text, and I just put into the side note here about how the social structure is set up. So it's easy to put the orange pyramid with the peasants and serfs at the bottom and the lords and vassals up near the top. So that's easy. That's like wealth and that's like status. But when we think about government, okay, the blue triangle, so this is really what's happening, because we do have people in the political arena that are at the top. And because of these obligations that they're going to have, the Lord has to do something. The Lord has to provide protection. But the serfs have to provide services back to the Lord. So we're going to see these pledges and these exchanges between the two different groups. So maybe this triangle makes it see a little bit easier about how we're trying to answer this question down near the bottom that says, use the text above, why did feudalism develop? Right, decentralized government. They needed protection. In order to get protection, you had to pay for it. I don't have any money, so I'm going to have to do something like I'm going to have to farm on the Lord's farm, or I'm going to have to give up a percentage of my crops and things of that nature. So you're going to begin to see how that's going to develop in Europe. Here is a simple chart that's going to ask us to try to place different groups of people. This is really supposed to be a matching activity. So you'll notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's not in order here. Your job is to place it in order, and you can see that I've done that. And I just want to highlight the church for a moment. There was no governmental leader, but there was a spiritual leader, and the Europeans are going to find that in the Catholic Church with the Pope. So you can see that the Pope is going to control spiritual life, and they will become a very powerful secular group. Secular means worldly. We're going to find out that the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is going to own more land than anybody else in Europe. And with that comes a lot of money. We'll see that the Pope is going to be that spiritual leader, and he will have authority over the kings. So we're going to see that kings want to go to heaven too. So what are they going to do? They are going to have and pledge their allegiance to the church also. We're going to see how that will impact things throughout the history of Europe as well. They will do so in funding and giving money. They will give soldiers to fight later on. And we'll talk about the Crusades. They will build great cathedrals in God's name. So a lot of stuff coming there from these rulers. So here's really the activity in this particular assignment. So your job, and I try to highlight it in yellow, based on what you've learned and some of the previous units, respond to the questions. So who actually is the social class with the greatest amount of power? What specific powers did they have? Moving down to question 2, what class of people made up a bulk of the medieval population? And if you were a serf, what would be your opinion of a feudal system? You're going to enjoy protection, but you're going to live kind of a crummy life with very few freedoms. This is going to ask us about the similarities. You'll notice that this is a image from the caste system in India, looking at Hindu society. And we're going to see those 4 main groups, and even the outcasts, remember? The untouchables are not even located in here. So it's a little bit different than the peasants and serfs of Europe. But this will be interesting to see how you can make some connections. Lastly, a couple of very simple multiple choice questions. You will not be graded on your accuracy for this, but this will be a good way for you to review some of the vocabulary and content of this introduction to Europe during the Middle Ages. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask your teachers for any help. Thank you.